Hello everyone, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Amber Reads Romance. Today I'm going to be doing the end of the month wrap up for July. I will try to remember to link down my mid-month wrap up for July. But for the last half of the month, I read about, I think it was 15 books. So it went really good. And I'm just going to briefly go over some of my stats for the month. And then we'll just dive into my reads. So I did read 28 books for July total. I read one 6-star, which was really fun. I'll go ahead and we're going to be going over that in this video. 11 5-stars, 4 4.5 stars, 8 4 stars. I had one 3.5 star, and then 2 3 stars, and then I had one DNF, which I will talk about briefly because I've already ranted about this book multiple times. So hopefully I don't go too long about it. So it was really good. I think I had a decent month. I did have that one 6-star, so that's really exciting to talk about. So let's just go ahead and dive right into my reads. Okay, so I read an arc for my first book, and it was Sincerely Your Inconvenient Wife, and this is from Julia Wolf. I was really excited to get this arc. I haven't read the first book in this series. This is the second book in the Harder They Fall series. I have gotten an arc for J. Wolf, which it's Julia Wolf, but it's like where she writes more new adult and it's like college romances. So I really loved those. So this was great because it's, you know, full adult romances. And I read this one. It is basically a marriage of convenience. It's between Luca and Shorsha. I think I'm saying that right. I'm so sorry if I'm saying that name wrong. But basically, Luca is this billionaire. He is taking over. He's going to be CEO of his dad's company. His dad's health was not doing really great. I think he had some like heart attacks or something. So he basically stepped down. And this is like one of the top motorcycle companies in the world. And so he's got a lot on his shoulders. He didn't really want to take that on, but he really has to step up. And he has this big Playboy image that the board isn't really fond of. And they kind of want him to have like a fake marriage, like just have a marriage to clean up his image and PR and everything so it'll look better. So he actually has a run-in with Shorsha at his house because his friend was throwing a party, or his cousin, I think it was throwing a party at his house, and he ends up coming home, earlier than he thought, and he sees her. She's kind of away from the party, like hanging out in his like private den kind of area. And so they totally hit it off. They almost have a one-night stand, but they get interrupted. So it was kind of like instant connection, instant sexual chemistry. It turns out they're actually part of the same friend group. So they kept missing each other, but they go to have like brunch, and she's going to finally meet this other guy, Luca, and she sees him there. He actually sees her beforehand and thinks she's stalking him. So that was kind of a funny like interaction. And then he realizes she's this friend that he's heard about. So they end up kind of talking again. And Shorsha is kind of this person that she says yes to everything. She's always doing stuff for other people. She's this giver. So he ends up talking with her, and he kind of tells her what he needs, this arranged marriage, and it'll kind of get her mom off her back. Shorsha does not believe in marriage. Her parents have a really messy, toxic kind of past that really affected her. And this was really great because then you realize that she is actually tied to somebody from one of my favorite books from the J. Wolf series. And that was like the Savage You, or the Savage, I think it's Savage You. And that is Locke. This is actually Locke's sister. And Locke was in Sweet Like Poison. It's one of my favorites. The Locke and Elena were so awesome in that book. Elena's like a mean girl, like she has such a redemption arc. And she's like this feisty, badass bitch. It really reminds you of kind of like Yellowstone as like Beth, and Rip. So they kind of remind you of that. But what was great about this is since they have this arranged, like kind of like this marriage of convenience, she had like they kind of have to break it to their families, and she takes him out to the ranch. And that's where we get to see Locke and Elena again. So it was really, really cool. They have kids. It's just so cute. And Elena is just still that badass bitch that I love. And she ends up kind of kicking like some sense into Sorsha, because literally Locke was messing up his relationship too, because he didn't believe in marriage and he was kind of like not trusting in that. So I really did enjoy this. I thought it was really fun, good billionaire romance, forced proximity, all that kind of stuff. I did think the third act conflict was a little dumb to me, but I get it, and I think it was handled really well. I did really enjoy their romance. One of the problems that I had with it was they were basically from the get-go, they were having sex. It wasn't like one of those, like, we're not going to have sex things. They are having sex right off the bat, but Luca wouldn't do it in his home because he didn't want to cross, like, those boundaries and cross a line. So they were constantly, like, hooking up at a hotel and stuff. And I just didn't like how he so, like, pushed her away. But I really did love their romance. It was sexy. I think I gave it 4 chili peppers. And then I did end up giving this a 5 stars. So it was a good arc. It was a great start to that. So I would definitely recommend it. I think I might jump into the first one because I never read the first one. Okay, so the next one that I have is Apocalys. This is really shiny, so I'm sorry if you're seeing my ring light. I got this sent to me a while ago, and I do apologize to this author. They sent this to me, and I really appreciate it. But I was like so behind, and I didn't get to it as fast as I wanted to. So I do really, really appreciate that. If anybody wants to send me books in exchange for honest review, I'm here for it. But this is a first-time author. This is her first book. I think it's V. Riviere. I might be saying that totally wrong, and I'm so sorry if I am. But this is Apocalys. It's basically the beginning of like a mafia, but it's a female-owned empire. And so this one, honestly, did not have much romance. I didn't mind it because it was such a fascinating, different read. There is multiple POVs in this. So you have like 4 different friends. They're really ride or die girls. And that's what I enjoyed the most, is that they would do anything for each other. They're very unique. They all bring something different to the book. And they are from rich families, like powerful families, but they want to build this mafia empire on their own, separate from their families. So they're slowly, like, we're not, even at the end of this, we don't have that empire created yet. It almost felt like a prequel, or because it's a good setup for the series. It is going to be a series after this book. I believe it goes into specific characters, so each book should be like solely on those characters. So to me, most of this was setting up the series and introducing these different characters. There are, love interests in this, but there's really not a lot of romance going on. I mean, there's kind of one sexy scene, I feel like, maybe a couple, but it really didn't stand out to me. And you don't really know what relationships mean, what's going on. I don't know, it's very confusing. So you have different POVs for each of the females. Then you have POVs for a couple of the guys or interesting characters in this. And then you have another POV, which is like a secret identity kind of thing in here. And he's literally talking to you as the reader. So it's kind of like that fourth wall break, kind of like Deadpool or something talking to the camera. And so he's actually kind of reading along and getting things from when you read. And it's weird. I've never seen a book like that. So I think this was really interesting. It kept me engaged, even though there was not a lot of romance. I was dying to know what's going to go on with these characters. You have 4 different women. We have Emma, Elena, Victoria, and Grace. And they each have their own, aliases. Sorry. They have their own aliases. They have like different names they go by. So that was kind of confusing too. Like, I ended up writing a lot of notes for this book to kind of keep track of like what's going on, because it was kind of bouncing between POVs and different names, and you're like, who's this again and what's going on here? So it was very interesting. It was different, so I definitely enjoyed it. I gave it 4.5 stars just because, I mean, there wasn't really any romance to me in this, and it's marketed as a romance. So I do understand, though, I feel like we're going to get to the romance in the next book. It does leave on a cliffhanger, so be aware of that. One of our main characters is kind of in a really bad situation. I'm not saying a lot about what this is about because you kind of have to go in blind, because it's just a lot of character development, a lot of like building these different characters, showing flashbacks, just different situations. One of the characters, Elena, was like my favorite. She was kind of like out of control. I think they called her Fira because she was like very fire. She would like burn shit down. And she kind of has an interaction with the guy when she was younger, and then he comes back into the picture later. And so she's like really into him and intrigued by him. He's kind of has his ulterior motives. So it's a lot of mystery, a lot of weird stuff going on. So I think you should definitely go in blind and then see where it goes. So the next book, I believe, is going to be Victoria's romance. And again, there's a cliffhanger at the end of this. So I would definitely recommend. I'm interested in continuing this series, definitely interested to see what this author is going to bring. Okay, then I read One Hot Italian Summer by Karina Halle. I've heard about this book so much, so I don't know why I haven't read it yet. But I listened to it on audiobook. It's on Anyplay if you want to listen to it there. But I really loved this. It just had such a summer feel to it. And, you know, this author is basically kind of, she was a duo author pairing, and her partner died. So now she's going off on her own, and she's having a really hard time in the writing process with writer's block and doesn't have a lot of inspiration. She's just struggling. So her agent basically says, hey, I have this place in Italy that you can go stay at, you know, and for the summer, and basically, or 6 weeks or something, I think it was, and write out there, get some inspiration because you need to get this done. So she goes out there, and it's such a funny meet cute because she's actually like nude out, you know, at this house, and then in walks this hot Italian guy and his son. And this is Claudio, and this is actually her agent's ex-husband, and this is his place. And he wasn't supposed to be home for the summer or whatever. He was supposed to go on a trip, but he's back. So he ends up letting her stay there. And then she, you know, he's an artist. I love art when heroes are artists. And he was just very alpha and swoony, and like just the whole like environment of being Tuscany, and they're drinking wine and they're out at beautiful restaurants and going to see art. And I was just like, I want to be there. I want to do that before I die. I really want to go out to Italy. So I really loved this. I think the heroine could get kind of annoying because she wouldn't like acknowledge or believe that he was really into her. And she was kind of making this a big deal when I'm like, it's just your freaking agent. Like, I guess it's taboo in a way, but I read a lot of taboo stuff, so it wasn't taboo enough to me. But I ended up giving it 5 stars. I really loved it. I think it was super sexy, fun. I think it's a perfect summer read. So I definitely recommend that one. Okay, then I continued on with the Tessa Dare read-along, and I read The Duchess Deal. And I actually, this is a reread for me, and I was surprised when I looked back at my Goodreads after reading it again that I only gave it 4 stars because it is not a 4-star. I upped it to 5 stars. I think this is such a perfect Tessa Dare novel. I think if you haven't read Tessa Dare before, I think it's such a perfect book to like jump into her because it's so witty and funny and like quirky but like sexy. And so I just think it's such a great book. You have Duke of Ashbury and Emma. And Duke of Ashbury has been pretty badly disfigured and wounded. And he was supposed to be getting married, but that woman basically didn't want to marry him before because he's ghastly now. And she had this woman, Emma, she was making her, you know, bridal gown, her gown. And so now she's made this gown. She's not getting paid. So she ends up showing up to Duke of Ashbury's place in the wedding gown to be like, you need to pay me for this. And he's just kind of like flabbergasted. He's really broody and moody. But he's like straight to the point, and I just love his character. He's just so like, it's so Beauty and the Beast kind of thing. But he ends up being like, well, I need a wife. I have a woman here in a wedding dress. Let's get married. And so they kind of come up to this like arranged marriage or marriage of convenience. And he basically kind of tells her, like, this is a marriage. I need an heir. Once I get an heir, you can go out to live in the country and whatever. Like, I don't care. So he's like, tells her, like, I don't want any of this. But I love it because Emma lays it down like, no, I don't want that to be all our marriages. Like, I want to, you know, have dinners together, talk together, like, you know, actually have a relationship. So she kind of like fights for that. And I just thought that was really cool. So this is such a great read. It's 5 stars. I loved it. It's a perfect Tessa Dare novel. And I think if you haven't read it, definitely read this one. Okay, then I read a book that's been on my TBR forever, and that is Triple Threat by K. Webster. So this is actually a duet. I only put the first book on my TBR, so I only read the first book in July, but I'm going to read the second one in August. And this is actually kind of a spin-off kind of thing off of her Cinderella series. That one was a very dark kind of degradation kink kind of thing. And the character Ash, she actually has, instead of like the evil stepsisters, she has evil stepbrothers, and they are triplets. So in that series, you hate these guys. They are evil. They like, Scout is like the worst. He's like a total psychopath, and he was obsessed with her. And he totally tries to sexually assault her. But in that book, because of what they did, her man Winston basically totally screwed them. They all got like injured so badly. Like, I don't really want to say what happened to them, give it away, but basically like their knees are all jacked up. Scout has a very severe limp, so they had like scholarships, I believe, and like going to school to play like rugby and stuff, and now that's down the drain. In that, they find out that they were actually related to I think it's a Morelli. I think it's a Morelli. And this is part of that big like universe that like all the different authors wrote in. So basically they find out they're part of this mafia family, and they kind of be his grunt guys that like do his dirty work for him or whatever he wants. So he ends up sending them to kind of spy, infiltrate, trick this girl Landry, who is kind of just has the shittiest life. She's stuck in this kind of being rich, but like her father is evil. He hates her younger sister because she's deaf, and he treats her like less than because she's deaf. And I believe she also, like, the mom died after giving birth to her. So this is a totally dysfunctional home. He kind of has her in this cage. And so these triplets end up infiltrating her life, but they all pretend to be the same guy. It's mostly Sully and Sparrow that are doing it. Like, one goes to school with her, and then one ends up working in the household to like teach her sister, you know, sign language or whatever, or reading lips, because her dad doesn't want to have to do sign language or anything. And then Scout, they kind of leave off to the side because Scout's pretty psycho. And they both end up falling for her, and then Scout starts to get obsessed with her. He's still obsessed with Ash and kind of stalking her from the Cinderella series. So like, eventually he kind of turns his interest into Landry. So this was interesting. It's kind of hard to rate it because it's not finished. It's a duet, but I enjoyed it. I didn't put it down. It's typical K. Webster, sucks you in. So I gave this one 5 stars, and I really, really enjoyed it. Okay, so then I continued with Tessa Dare again, and I read the Governess game, and this was between Chase and Alexandria. I thought this one was okay. It's not as good as the other ones, I think, in this series. You end up having this woman come, like, she's part of that friend group with the girl in the Duchess Deal. And I think she, like, fixed clocks and did stuff like that. But she ends up getting this job as a governess for Chase. And she's trying to help these kids that he basically took in. And they're kind of all over the place, want to run away. They're just a mess. So it leads to lots of hijinks and things like that. But they start this kind of romance I don't know. He kind of pushes her away. I think he does have to grovel a little bit. Honestly, it's really vague in my head because it didn't stand out to me. I gave it 4 stars still because it was still a good Tessa Dare book, but it just didn't live up to Duchess Deal for me. So it kind of fell a little bit flat. I didn't really like the characters as much or feel like their connection. So I think it was decent, but I gave it 4 stars. Okay, so I might rant a little bit about this next book. It was an ARC that I got. It's called Wicked Angel, and it's by Lucy Smoke and AJ Macey. And it's a mafia romance. It's in arranged marriage. He is an assassin that basically is moved his way up in the mafia. And the father is basically doesn't really have an heir to take over, even though his like older daughter is pretty ruthless and a psychopath and thinks that she should take over. But he basically brings in this assassin from his mafia. He trusts him and he thinks that he would be a good leader so that when he dies or he wants to kind of step down early, that he can take over and by marrying one of his daughters. So he gives him the choice out of either of the daughters, and he ends up picking, I believe her name was Angelina, but he called her Angel. They had a run-in like years ago when like her mom died, and they were at the funeral. They were kind of like attacked, and he like helped keep her safe and all that kind of stuff. So he sees Angel's totally into her. This is a big age gap. And he's very alpha and dominant. There's a lot of BDSM, rough sex. She's a virgin heroine, and the first time that they have sex is pretty rough. And like the first time before they even have sex, I'm just going to warn you, you may not want to know this, but there is major fisting in this book. And I wasn't a fan of that. That doesn't get me going. If you like that, then I think that's going to be great for you. It's a very detailed scene describing every part of getting prepared to do that. And it kind of took me out. I wasn't really into it. I was thinking of being a virgin and having that be my first experience. I just don't buy it. I don't think that would be great. And trust me, she's like tied down. So it's very like non-con in the beginning of this because he's basically punishing her for like running away, and it's this whole thing. So that was one thing that I didn't really enjoy, but you know, it's not for everybody. Some people really like that. My problem came with the pacing and what my expectations were. I just watched a video from Jen at the Book Refuge where she kind of brought this up. And it's when it is ending in a cliffhanger, but you were never warned. So nowhere in the arc, nowhere on Goodreads, nowhere anywhere did it say that this was going to be part of a duet or a series or whatever. So I go in expecting a standalone. And like nothing's happening. It's drawing it out. It's very slow pacing. And I'm going like, well, we're almost at the end here. Like what's going on? All of a sudden it picks up with all this action, ends in a cliffhanger. And then on the cliffhanger in the epilogue, it jumps like 5 years. So that really pissed me off. I want to know ahead of time if it's going to end in a cliffhanger. I'm going to read it because it's an arc. Obviously, I'm going to read it. But then I would know going in that this is just part of the story. And I wouldn't have been so pissed. Like, it honestly affected my whole rating because, like, I wasn't expecting it to end like that. I thought we were going to get a full-fledged story. And then it did make sense on like how I didn't fully connect with these characters. I didn't really feel a romance. It felt like him dominating her and trying to, you know, own her and have her be his wife. It didn't feel like a romance. And now I get that because of this cliffhanger. But I think that authors need to be putting that in the front. They need to be putting in the marketing material. They need to be making it clear so that you go in knowing that. And so I ended up giving this 4 stars because it was an arc. I honestly probably would have rated it like 3 or 3.5. but I rounded it up for the arc, and it was kind of on me, I guess, for not knowing, but I think it should have been clearer that this is part of a series. Usually on Goodreads, even if it's the first book, it'll say book 1, like it'll say the number 1 in a series. It did not say that at all, and I was just so confused. So I gave it 4 stars. It's 4 on the chilies. It's definitely got a lot of kink, a lot of BDSM, spanking, punishment, all that kind of stuff, the fisting, as I said. So just check your triggers before you go into this, because it is definitely like heavy on the rough sex. Okay, so on to something better. I read Edin by Lily Mayne. This is book number 2 in her Monstrous series. If you've seen me talk about it before, Soul Eater was one of my favorite books this year. That was her first book, and I just thought it was a 6-star read. It was just amazing. And you met Edin in that book. He's this big purple monster with like horns, and he wears a kilt, and he's just like a jolly, like sweet sunshine guy. So I was interested to read his story. And in this, we have Hunter. He is actually in the military, and they are on their way back up to the facility. They've been kind of working undercover and out in the wastes for a long time, and they're going back to the military facility. But in the last book, that was basically destroyed. All the monsters escaped and all of that. So they end up getting there and seeing what's going on. So they're trying to travel to another location, and they end up getting attacked. And his best friend, he gets taken, and he falls down like this sinkhole, and Edin comes along, and he basically saves him and agrees to help. He basically tells him, like, I can help you find them. They're these creatures that basically travel underground, so it'd be really hard for him to go after them. And so they basically kind of go on this road trip. Hunter is very very angry. You might be annoyed by him in the beginning. He's very moody, grumpy, untrustful. So he kind of comes off with like these walls, but you kind of get why that is. He has a prosthetic leg because he got injured so bad by like a monster. They had to like cut off his leg with a bad bite. So he has like a lot of those issues. And so you can kind of see that. And then he also has a bad scar on his face that makes him think he's like not as attractive. But basically him and Edin doesn't give up. He doesn't let his rudeness get in the way. He basically breaks him down, wears him down, and Hunter really falls for Edin. And so they're on this traveling, like this road trip, trying to get to his best friend and save him. And there's a lot of different adventures that happen along the way. We get to see Win the Soul Eater again and his lovely man. And it was really fun to see Win from like another perspective, because he was very broody and very protective of his man. He did not like Hunter. So I really liked that. I didn't like it as much as Soul Eater. I just didn't think it had the same hit that I did reading that book, but I gave it 4.5 stars. It's definitely spicy. 4 stars, very good sex scenes. I'm just really loving this series. I think it's so unique and interesting, so I would definitely recommend it if you haven't started reading this yet. Okay, so on to my 6-star read. So I read Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent. And this is book 2 in the War of Lost Hearts. The first book had a lot of like world building and all these crazy like amount of characters and places that I listened to on audiobook, and it was hard for me to stay focused on it. So I think I only gave that about 4 stars, I think, because it was hard for me to pay attention that clearly and know what's going on. I did really like it. I liked the story. I thought the romance was great. But this second book, like, just took it to the next level. Like, Carissa Broadbent has such beautiful writing. Like, the quotes in here were just beautiful. Expanding on the world building. We get a POV from a different character. And it's kind of a mystery of like, what does this have to do with this story? I thought it was a Fae character, and I thought she was going to tie into maybe their war that they're in. And I'm not going to give that away because it blew my mind when it revealed like what this character had to do, the impact of this whole POV. It was just so well done. Again, if you haven't heard of this is Tisana. She grew up a slave. She ended up trying to buy her freedom because her owner said that if she saved enough money, he would free her. Of course he doesn't. She ends up kind of fighting back. He beats her like really bad, lashes her, where she ends up killing him with her magic, and she goes off to these people that basically help you hone your magic and get these skills and all that kind of stuff. And she ends up getting paired with Max, and he's gonna train her. And in that book, so much happens where she ends up taking in this kind of entity that makes her this big weapon. So you're dealing with that. And then her and Max's, they were already full on together at the end of the first book. And this book just built on that relationship. I can say that this book doesn't fall into like the second book, like filler book kind of thing for me. Honestly, it just built this world up. It built more character, so much more character development. I mean, like I was like crying at one point. It was just really beautiful. And I mean, the third character is just so amazing. And that whole storyline was so fascinating. I mean, this book was so good. I don't know. I can't say a lot about it because I don't want to give too much away, but basically they're continuing their war and there's just so much stacked against them. This is like high stakes, the whole book. Like it's very dangerous. They're up against it, and sometimes it feels hopeless, but they're like hopeful together. And Tasana's trying to do this because she wants to free all the slaves. And so she's got her own journey and what she's trying to do, and people have their own agendas and military, like the whole political intrigue and all this kind of stuff. So, and I like how maybe somebody's considered a bad guy, but like there's nuances to that character and you can see why they're doing the things that they're doing. I just loved it so much. It was 6 stars. It was so good. So, I mean, if you haven't started reading this, I know it's really hyped right now. I think it's definitely, I didn't know if I believed the hype in the first book, but after reading the second book, it was just so good. I would definitely give it a shot. Okay, so on to my DNF. I'm going to try and keep this brief. I am doing a vlog of giving a couple DNFs a second chance. Hopefully I'll be posting that soon because I'm super behind in posting and editing my vlogs. But I read Haunting Adeline for this vlog, and it was a struggle. I realized when I went to go do this, I downloaded it again from Kindle Unlimited, and I only got to 24% the first time when I DNF'd it. This book is one of the most overhyped, crappy books I've ever read. I know a lot of you probably love this book, and please don't come at me, but I hate it. Like, I think it's got the worst writing I've probably read in a really long time. It's so hyped. I don't get it. It's horrible. So I hated it. I pushed myself. I tried really hard. I got to 60% and I said, tapped out. I am not doing this. I am not going to punish myself and put myself through torture to try and get through this book. At 60%, we're at 300 something pages and nothing is happening. I don't care about her great grandmother's haunting or story of being stalked. I hate Zaid. I hate Adeline. She is the dumbest heroine I've ever seen. She's too stupid to live. And their whole dynamic is just dumb. The sex scenes were boring. His lines were so cheesy. This book, in one word, is cringe. So I'm not going to continue to go on because I do that enough in my vlog. So hopefully I'll post that soon for you guys if you're interested. But yeah, so I DNF'd that one. Okay, and then the other book that I had for that vlog was Crowned by Hate by Amo Jones. The first time I read this, I think I was just sensitive, so I do feel like this is the wrong time, not the wrong book kind of thing, because I just think it hit me hard at the time. There is a sexual assault in the beginning of this book in the flashbacks, and it's pretty severe and with drugging and all that kind of stuff, and I didn't really like that. That it was kind of minimalized too in it, and so I took a step away from that one. But I enjoyed it a lot more this time. I finished the book. I gave it 4 stars. It is Amo Jones, so there's not a lot you can say. This book is a part of a duet. It's honestly kind of like a novella. It's super short. So I really quickly read through this. I was sucked in this time. It's an arranged marriage, kind of actually not fully arranged marriage because it's kind of like a blackmail marriage. This guy is, the female in this, she is the president's daughter, and this guy basically re-enters her life. He was at the incident where she was being assaulted. It wasn't him, but it was his brother. And she ended up having to like defend herself, killing the brother. And so now he has this revenge plot against her. At least that's kind of what we think it is. But there is his own agenda and he wants her to marry him. And so he has footage of her that night, everything. So she's forced to marry him. And then they kind of get into this BDSM dominated kind of relationship. And it just has a lot of weird twists to it. I honestly saw the big shock surprise thing coming, but still at the end of the book, it ends in a cliffhanger. You're still kind of going, what the hell? So I'm excited to go into the second half of the book, like the second book in August, and see how this actually fully rates. I ended up giving it 4 stars. So I did enjoy it and I finished it. So at least I got through one book for that vlog. And then continuing on with the Tessa Dare read along, and I read the Wallflower Wager. This was the last book actually for the read along, and so I just had a great time, and I just think it's so great that Rachel Reads and Sings kind of did this and brought it to my attention, and it was able for me to finally go into reading like more Tessa Dare. I had only read the Duchess Deal to start out with. So I really had a good time, and I found like a new author that I really, really enjoy. So the Wallflower Wager I really loved. This one was just like the perfect Tessa Dare romance. This is between Gabe Duke and Penelope was just this quirky Wallflower girl that basically had something bad happen to her, didn't really want to be part of like going to balls and any of that, and she's this girl that just takes in all the like unwanted animals. She's like living on her own at this house, and he ends up moving in next door, but he's trying to sell this and make money. He is not a duke. The other, like, I can't remember the series, but it says like a duke, and I can't remember what, like meets a duke or something. He's not a duke, but his name's Duke. And Gabe Duke basically had to work his ass off, move his way up off the streets, and he's this very rich man. And so he's, you know, trying to make money off this property, and trying to do these renovations. But we got this girl with like a million animals and goats and, you know, everything. So he needs her to get them all homes. So they come to an agreement for her to find homes for everybody. And then because her aunt wants her to like, and her brother might want her to go back because she's not getting anything done here, living in the middle of nowhere and just having all these animals. So they kind of come to this agreement, and he's going to try and help bring her back into society because she has to kind of go back into society and look like she's part of it, get a new dress, you know, do all that kind of stuff. So they end up like just having these really funny interactions. They like travel together, and then there's an issue with the carriage where they end up having to share a bed, and they're just really, really cute. I loved Gabe so much. Like, he was so alpha, but thought he wasn't good enough for her, and that he couldn't be with somebody that's like, you know, a lady. And I just loved Penelope's character. So I really enjoyed this one. I gave this one 5 stars, and it was a great conclusion to that read along. Okay, so then I read Heart Recaptured by Tillie Cole, which is the second book in her Hades Hangman series. And I've been putting this off forever, reading this one, because I had heard that the heroine in this one is actually somebody from the cult that still believes and does not want to be freed by the cult. She's totally brainwashed and, you know, does not agree with anything. So I thought that's going to be really hard to read, and it was, but it was still a really good book. This is between Kai and Delilah. If you don't know what this is, it's a cult that basically, like, it was just a horrible cult, and this motorcycle MC freed this girl from it, and she ends up getting her friends, her sisters, out too. But they're very traumatized. There's a lot of, brainwashing, child abuse, child, molestation, and sexual assault and brainwashing, and just, it's very, very dark. So it's seriously dark subject matter. So please check your triggers before going into these books. This one, this girl goes through hell in this book, and there's so much that happens. But she basically is like the most beautiful one, and she was told, they're the cursed, and she was told her beauty, like she's a sin, and she's sin incarnate, and they're tempt men because her father wanted to molest her, and older men, they basically blamed her and said she was the problem. And she has grown up with this her whole life and believes it. So when she gets rescued, she does not want to be rescued. She doesn't want to be with this MC. Kai is a very man-ho, sexy, VP of the MC, and he's very into her, but he's very sexual and comes on to her a little too hard while he's drunk, and it's very traumatizing to her. So Styx basically tells him, you're gonna have to apologize, make amends, and then I want you to teach her about outside life. We need this girl to get with the program because my girl's getting upset. So he basically does that. He starts teaching her, and they start building this good relationship and kind of dynamic and building trust. And so, but it's really hard to read because she is just constantly blaming herself. She thinks that only men want her beauty and only want sex from her, and it's all her fault. And so it's just really dark. So, and you do have stuff going on with the cult kind of at this new place. They're trying to rebuild. So it was a good book, but it was very dark and hard to read with that. I do think it's important though, because Tillie did do a lot of research, and a lot of this stuff is stories from these women that were in cults. And it's hard when you're brainwashed and conditioned to just turn that off and become a normal person. They're totally ingrained to feel these things. So I gave it 4 stars. Do check your triggers again. There's sexual assault. There's assault on page. There's branding, burning, just total abuse. There's flashbacks to when she was a child. So just be aware that it's very dark. And then I read Radiance by Grace Draven, and I really loved this. This was Friends to Lovers done right. I don't really like Friends to Lovers. You've probably heard me say that. I find it really hard to find one that does it perfectly, where it's like watching their friendship build into this beautiful romance and something more. A lot of times they just depend on flashbacks or this or that, or telling us that they love them, and we don't see that. So this was just really cool because it is an arranged marriage between 2 different species. It's like a human woman, and I can't remember what they're called, if it was the Kai, but they're kind of like a nocturnal creature. So they both think the other one is disgusting and ugly, but they have such a great first meeting where they're being totally honest, and they continue that where they make jokes. And they are just honest about, I'm not attracted to you. But they go into this marriage wanting to put 100% in and, try to make this marriage work and be a good partnership. And so she ends up going off with him to his lands, and he's got this psycho mother, and he's living in a different location. So it's just this really slow burn of them being so close, learning about each other, becoming really good friends. And then all of a sudden that just starts to change, where she's attracted to him, he's attracted to her. And so it was just so beautiful, their relationship, watching it grow. And this book kind of ended with a weird epilogue. I didn't realize it was a full series, but it kind of brought in supernatural or creepy stuff at the end. So I think that it'll be interesting to go on to read the next book. But it's pretty slow. A lot of people might not like it because it's day-to-day life, just kind of more sitting with the characters and watching their development. Not a lot of outside plot or fantasies, how they usually have big war scenes or battles. It doesn't really have that, but there is some action happening at the end of the book. But I did appreciate that because it just showed their slow build. So I ended up giving this one 5 stars, and I really, really loved it. So the last book I read was actually just a novella. I decided I wanted to Like, just read a Jessa Kane. So Jessa Kane's crazy. She writes the weirdest novellas, but I love her. This one is When You Know. This is between Bobby and Mandy. He's like a firefighter, super hot guy. She's a school nerd. And he sees her at a bar, and then all Alpha basically carries her out of there and makes him hers. And then you jump a few weeks, and it's like they're like too codependent, toxic, where they never want to be away from each other. So she tries to end things because it's not healthy. And of course, we know Jessa Kane's heroes aren't going to have any of that. So I gave this one 3 stars because it was kind of boring me, and it was just a little over the top. But I mean, that's what you're getting with the Jessa Kane novella. So, I mean, what else was I expecting? But I enjoyed it. I mean, I started skimming some of the sex scenes at the end because I was just over it. But I mean, there's some hot stuff in there. So I think it'd be really fun. It's over the top alpha dominant hero. So, but that is all the books that I had. Thank you so much for watching this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And then hopefully I will be getting that vlog up soon. I have a couple of vlogs I think I have to get up, but I really need to get that DNF vlog up. But stay tuned for that. But thank you so much as always, and I will see you on the next one.